Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and we hope you're all well at home and enjoying this fantastic day of fun and whiskey and what else can we say about it? It's just great. Here at Spirit of Yorkshire, I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by Amy Teasdale, brand ambassador for Spirit of Yorkshire and Filey Bay single malt whiskey. Welcome.
Hi, thank
to
you
your distillery.
Thank you for having me at our distillery.
That's great to see you, and it's good to speak to another member of the team who isn't Joe or David or Tom. So what we're going to do is, so many of you have bought a tasting pack which includes the three whiskies, so the flagship, the peated, and the Yorkshire Day 2021. So we're going to take you through a little tasting of the flagship.
Yeah, exciting.
And then we're going to have a little video just to take you through the process and of the raw goods until they come to the distillery. So at the Waltop Distillery, where they brewery, where they produce the mash and the wash for us here, and then we're going to move to the distillery, Amy and I, and go through the distillation process and taste through peated, and then eventually taste through Yorkshire Day.
Exciting, should be good.
So there's quite a lot to fit in.
Absolutely.
Are you ready?
I think I possibly am. Yeah.
Good stuff. So we've pre-poured some of the flagship here, 46%, and we're about to enjoy it. So Amy, over to you. Tell us about the flagship bottling of Filey Bay.
So this is our sort of house style of whiskey. So this is the one that is relatively going to stay the same across the board, really. So we've got those really lovely light sort of fruity, creamy flavors coming through. As you can see, it's a really lovely color. So if you have actually got these packs, I would definitely recommend getting it open, get it in a glass, really sort of have a really lovely look and really just nose it. I think the thing with whiskey is you've got to kind of get used to what you've got in your glass. You want to play with it. I know you're not supposed to kind of play with your food and stuff, but I think where whiskey is concerned, it's kind of allowed, definitely. We're really happy with it.
The colour is a nice sort of pale gold.
Yeah, it's a really lovely colour. The bourbon led flavours. The bourbon cask that we use really give that lovely golden colour. Absolutely, it is
because you don't use any spirit caramel or anything to colour the whiskey.
No, not at all. It's all natural colour, which is fantastic.
We'd like to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And moving on to the nose, I was saying earlier that I get lovely kind of cream coconut, and almost like a banana custard over tropical fruit.
Yeah. It's got a lovely sort of creaminess, hasn't it? Definitely. You still get a lot of the fruit.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is something that we wanted something that everybody would really enjoy. We wanted a whiskey that would, be the tastiest we could possibly make.
Yeah, and universally appealing.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a great beginner whiskey as well. So if it is something that you've never really gone into, the flagship is perfect for that.
To start.
Yeah, absolutely. It appeals to all of the senses.
Great stuff. And what about water? Would you suggest adding water to it?
Again, it's completely up to you. I personally don't really add water unless it's, quite a high alcohol, really. Other than that, I think the thing with it is I would definitely try it before you add anything to it, and then adjust accordingly, I think, is the way to do it.
Very good advice.
Yes.
Too many times.
Absolutely.
I put water in whiskey before I've even tasted it, and then instantly regret it.
Yeah.
I did add water to this last time. I'm not going to this time because it's a little bit later in the day, and I think what I need is just that lovely kind of intensity.
Absolutely.
Of flavor.
Definitely, especially now it's after lunchtime. It's really good. And if this is sort of the first drink you come into, in the day, I would definitely take a little sip first and just sort of hold it in your mouth and get used to how it feels. First off, really coat your mouth with it and then go in for a second sip, definitely.
Yeah. It's definitely got a lovely tropical fruity, really mouth-watering.
Yes, really, really does. It sets everything off, doesn't it? It starts everything dancing, which is what you want from a nice drink, definitely.
And with it being 46%, it's non-chill filtered.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that should mean that we get a little bit more texture characteristics.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Which I feel like it does. Like when it's in your mouth, it does leave you with that almost like you've eaten, like when you've eaten caramel, it leaves that kind of smoothness on your tongue. Definitely, I feel like this has achieved that. Definitely.
Lovely stuff.
It's good, isn't it? I could definitely sit and drink it all afternoon. It's very summery as well. It gives you those warm days kind of feel to you as well.
Sure.
It's a good one.
And what would be your favourite expression so far from Barley?
Oh, that really changes. That's really bad because I'm quite fickle. Every time I bring a new one out, it's my new one. So this one will always be the one I will go to, definitely, 100%. Following that, the peat finish, which we're going to try next, is actually my favourite at the moment. It's a tie between that and the Yorkshire Day. So,
And so how long have you worked here at?
So I'm coming up to just 3 years. So Christmas will be my 3rd year here, which is quite cool. I started in the coffee shop and kind of
graduated through to
definitely
the real deal.
Yeah, absolutely, the proper job, as it were.
Well, you've got a great team of people to nurture. Development.
They're all great. David's great, Joe's great. Everyone's really, really loving, really free with the knowledge as well. So if I've got lots of questions, it's really great to glean that information. Which is really lovely.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
Yes. Okay, so I think that's great. I mean, that's a lovely place to start for this session. I think we're going to head to the video.
Perfect. Sounds good.
And we can get ready to take everyone on a fun virtual tour and tasting of peated and Yorkshire Day. So everyone at home, if you want to stay tuned, please enjoy the video we're about to play for you with the wonderful music, and we'll see you back in a few minutes.
See you soon.
My grandfather bought the farm at the end of the Second World War and farmed it until the late 50s. My dad took over from him, farmed it till the mid-80s, and I really have taken it over from that point. It's a traditional Yorkshire arable farm, high on the Yorkshire wolds, and in the late 1990s, early 2000s, we were not making very much money from doing our traditional growing of oilseed rape, wheat and barley. So we had, like everybody else in the country, to start to look to move the business in a different direction. I looked at the resources that we had on the farm at that particular point, and the two main ones that struck me were the fact that we had our own water supply, and the other thing is that we grow a lot of malting barley. So I put the two and two together and came up with the idea of brewing, and did some research into that, and decided that that would be a way forward for us on our particular farm. So in 2003, we set up the Wold Top Brewery, and that's continued to grow over the last 15, 16 years. In 2011 and 12, it seemed like a logical progression that we could make a whisky, because the first part of the brewing process and the first part of the whisky making process are identical. Having explored that, it then needed putting into practice, and if I'd not gone and done that, then I'd have gone to my grave regretting it.
Tom and I have been friends for many years. We've played rugby together, we've seen our families grow up together. So Tom approached me with an idea of making Yorkshire's first single malt whisky. I thought it was a fantastic idea and couldn't wait to get involved with him. So we looked into the production of whisky around the country, and it was evidence that it had never been made in Yorkshire before, which is very unusual, as we have some of the best malting barley growing land in the area. And it just made absolute sense to use the resources local to us to produce something completely unique. The next step for us really was to develop a brand behind the story, and as we are based only 10 minutes down the road from the biggest gannet colony in the UK, we felt we wanted to use the gannet as our mascot, as it represents a lot that we're doing at the business. It's very tenacious, it's very graceful, and it's full of spirit. So we felt that represented us very well.
The Yorkshire Wolds is a great area for growing malting barley. It's got thin calcareous soils, which barley likes. Barley does not like big, heavy land. We also have a fantastic water supply as well, which comes from the chalk aquifers under the farm. The farm doesn't actually have mains water, And the one thing about this water is that it's very, very consistent, which is one of the reasons why we think our beer has been so consistent over the last 18 years.
So the first part of making a whisky is actually making something that resembles beer, which is called wash. We do that by using the barley from the farm and sending it down to Munton's malting factory at Bridlington. That comes back to us as a malted barley, and we then steep that barley in hot water and make a very sticky, sugary solution. From that, we add the yeast and we start to produce alcohol. Once we've got this sugary solution and it's turned into alcohol, we end up with an 8% alcohol wash. This is the product we put into the copper stills, and this is the stuff that we start to make the whisky from.
Well, we're incredibly proud that we are a fully fledged field-to-bottle distillery. We've got absolutely everything that we need here on the Yorkshire Wolds for making an excellent whisky. One of the things that's really important to us is knowing exactly that it's our barley that goes into our bottle. What that also does is it gives us a degree of consistency that a lot of small brewers and distillers wouldn't have, because our malt is effectively one big batch.
There's only a handful of distilleries around the world that could claim to be fully field-to-bottle producers. That gives us great traceability. You can rewind that liquid back into a field, which I find very fascinating and a great story.
The sustainability of the farm is really important to us, and that's what underpins everything that we do. It was the reason why we started brewing in the first place, was to make sure that the farm could continue and could be a legacy for the future. One of the things we're trialling this year is direct drilling, which means basically you don't disturb the soil when you plant the next crop. The current thinking, and it's been shown by various different research bodies, that by ploughing the land we are releasing a lot of carbon into the atmosphere, which doesn't really need to be released. Our responsibilities as a land user are to make sure that we don't take too much out of the soil or the land and leave not enough for the future. So it's trying to really safeguard future years with the best current thinking.
You don't get many chances to produce something that's completely unique, and whisky in Yorkshire is one of them. You only get the chance to release first Yorkshire whisky once, and we felt, Tom and I together, wanted that opportunity to do something completely different. So we chose the name Filey Bay for our first single malt whisky, as we can see Filey Bay from our distillery. It made absolute sense to use the area, as we love the coast, we love the sea, it's ever changing, and Filey Bay represents everything we are at this distillery. The next step for us really was to develop a brand, and what we didn't want to do was just copy somebody else's idea of what whisky should be. So we developed a brand which stood out, which was different, which was fresh. Again, using all the assets of the area and everything that we felt was good about the area. And we hope we've put that into the bottle, we've put that into the label, and everybody involved in the business has put everything into what we've produced. So we feel that we've produced a brand that is completely different and unique. First and foremost, we set up the Spirit of Yorkshire to make the best possible whisky we could. But then, of course, we needed to share that. So to do that, we set up the visitor centre and the coffee shop. That is very important to us, that it's not just about the production, but it's also about the people. So thank you for coming to the Spirit of Yorkshire and sharing our journey. I hope you enjoy the rest of your tour and take away a part of Yorkshire which is completely unique.
Okay.
So are we live?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey!
Mr. Q there.
Well, welcome back, everyone, and welcome back to the virtual tour and tasting that Amy Teasdale, brand ambassador here at Spirit of Yorkshire, is conducting kindly for us. And it's all part of the Yorkshire Day celebrations here at Spirit of Yorkshire.
Yeah.
So we've done the flagship, which was delish.
Yeah, really good.
You guys have seen the video just now, which illustrates the process prior to the liquid coming here. And now Amy is going to lead us on a tour.
Yeah, we're going to go and do the actual what we do here, which is
Fantastic.
always fun, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're going to do a bit of tasting as well.
Yeah, so we're going to try some peat finish up there by the stills, and then we'll carry on, and we will go and try some of the Yorkshire Day as well, which is really exciting.
Brill. Right.
Yeah, ready? Let's go. So,
wow, look at this.
They're amazing. You know, they're so beautiful. You know, you can see copper is such a beautiful material.
Oh, isn't it?
Yeah, really, really lovely. The colour, absolutely everything. So these two, what we have are pot stills. Basically, everything here will affect our whiskey, the way that we want it to taste. So we have two pot stills, and they're actually made by a company called Forsyths. They're like the Rolls-Royce of the still makers. The best at what they do, really, honestly. But what we have, so we've got this one. This is our 5,000 litre wash still. So this is the very first process of that distillation. And then this one is our 3,500 litre spirit still, which is the second part. So we get 10,000 litres of wash delivered to us twice a week. Okay, now that comes down from Moortop, which is about 10-15 minutes away from here, you know, really not far away. So that will come down here, pull up and transfer wash into our wash receiver, which is a silver vessel in the background, which, you know, is ideal where we want it to be. Now, we basically transfer 5,000 litres of wash into our wash still, okay? Now, as you're looking at it, you can see it's a really beautiful shape, okay? Now, there's a few little quirks on this because this still is actually built specifically for this building, okay? Now, pot stills, you tend to find the lighter, the taller those stills, you know, the lighter and fruitier spirit is going to be. And that was something we wanted here. You know, we wanted a light fruity spirit like we discussed earlier, you know, something that was easily accessible. So we have this ball here, which is quite a cool looking thing, isn't it? It's not just to make it look even cooler than it already does look, okay? It does serve a purpose. This really emphasizes that copper contact. This actually adds 0.5 metre in height onto the top of that still. So in effect, if you think we're going for light and fruity, So again, you know, look, we are fully manual, you know, so there is no automation, which is really quite cool as well, you know, and our distiller is in charge of all of that. So once we've got our wash in here, we've got the coils on the bottom, so they basically work like kettles. So your kettle at home is effectively a small stiller, really, I guess, you know. So the alcohol from that wash, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get it to evaporate. Okay, so those coils will heat all of that creamy wash and start that alcohol to evaporate. Now, if you can see, I don't know, I think Joe mentioned it earlier, you know, there is a window on here, and that does let our distiller keep an eye on what is happening on there, because obviously if you think your wash looks nice, like a creamy liquid, okay, and you're working with yeast and everything. So as a sort of byproduct of heating that up to get it to temperature, it's going to bubble and foam. And what we don't want is for it to go crazy. You know, if you're boiling a pan of milk, okay, and it gets to temperature and then you walk away.
And that's what these.
That's basically what that does, which I think has been mentioned previously by Joe, So what we don't want, so as long as we can keep that to a steady temperature and a steady pressure, we're good to go. So once the alcohol started to evaporate, it travels up here, so it travels up the swan neck, okay? Then if you follow it along to your right there, that is what we call our line arm, Now the alcohol is vapor, travels along there, hits the condenser there, turns back into a liquid and actually comes down here. So if I'll show you. So that now see-through liquid comes down here and travels into the spirit safe, which again you have seen. But again, this is quite a cool looking piece of equipment, you know. This is like our main hub.
It's a Scottish computer.
Absolutely, basically. This lets us keep an eye on every stage of our distillation, you know. So like I said, we're fully manual. So it is important for us to keep an eye on what's actually happening. But the first stage of that distillation is what we call our low wines. And that comes out at a higher alcohol actually than the wash. So the wash comes in at 8% alcohol, okay, and it's nice and creamy. And then once we've done that whole process, what actually happens is it becomes perfectly clear like water and is now at 25%. It's pretty cool. So when that gets collected in a tank, and then we can go on for our next stage, which is always exciting because the next stage is where it starts to get really quite exciting because we can then decide which part of that second bit will become our whiskey, which is what ultimately we are after.
Exactly. Jonathan, can you just focus in on the Yorkshire computer?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you know, fully manual. You just basically
So this is
eye
how
on it.
you maintain and control the temperature.
Basically, so like using the gauges here, so you can see we've got our temperature gauge here, and we have our pressure gauge here. Now, as long as that, when that gets to about 90 degrees, it does actually start to get that foaming on there.
Yes,
Anything, if it starts to go higher than that, then it does kind of go crazy.
So you want to avoid
You want to avoid that. You don't want to be cleaning that up. We don't have time.
No,
we don't have time for that.
You don't want Angry Joe.
Absolutely. Yeah. No Angry Joe, no Angry David. So yeah, but yeah, you know, as long as Dom can keep an eye on that, we're happy. And like I say, once we've collected all that, we are ready for that next stage. So
Brilliant.
You know, that 3,500 litre spirit still right there. That is the one that does the second part. Okay, so same process again. We've got those coils on the bottom, which will heat all of that lovely see-through liquid up. Okay, now the alcohol evaporates, travels up here, which is our lantern, and then again separately across the line arm on this side. Yeah. Same process really, only rather than working with the creamy liquid, we're now working with that see-through liquid. Hits the condenser, turns back into a liquid, comes into our spirit safe again. So our Scottish computer.
There's a little sign on it.
Yeah.
Post-it note.
You know, we get asked the question quite a few times. I think Joe did mention it previously. You know, why is it not locked?
Yes.
There's a few things floating around about that, which I won't go into. But for us, it's just easier. You know, there's no point us keeping it locked because we're manual, so we do have to sometimes get in and give it a nose. You know, and sometimes we do have to taste it if we really have to.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you'll notice we've only got 2 bowls here, but actually the second stage happens in this second part. Distillation happens in 3 stages. Yeah. So this first bowl right here, this is what we actually catch the 4 shots in. So that is the very beginning stage of the spirit distillation. Okay. Now what that 4 shots does really, it kind of just flushes through sort of any of those sort of darker flavors that are left over from the last distillation. Okay. Now every distillery is different and every distiller is different. So, you know, it just flushes those darker ones through.
That's right. And then you turn it.
Yeah,
to the second
you
bowl.
know all this. I know you do. You know, the second stage is the middle cut. So that is actually the stuff that goes off to be whiskey, you know, or the heart of the spirit. You know, you have your heads, which is your 4 shots, your middle cut, which is your heart. And that is the stuff that will go off to be whiskey. Again, that middle cut can depend, you know, on distiller. Ours typically is an hour and 20 minutes, give or take. You know, that tends to be where ours is, you know, so we will leave that running for that amount of time, and that is the stuff.
Yeah. And roughly, what's the sort of alcohol percentage on the?
So on this one, so when we're just using the pots, this is about 73. Yeah, so give or take, which is pretty good, really. You know, we started at 8 and it's gone all the way up there.
Yeah.
So obviously, it, you know, once it gets to that you know, high alcohol, we do have to cut it back, but we'll get into that.
It's a really magical process.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, it is pretty cool. You know, the whole thing.
And so the feints and the 4 shots.
Yep.
What do you do with them?
So what we do with those, so the first part of that run and the last part of that run, we actually collect them together. And what happens, we will put them through with the low wines for tomorrow's distillation, if that makes sense.
It's all reused again.
Basically, we try and recycle and reuse as much as we possibly can. You know, we try to be as green as we can. You know, like I saw in the video, you know, we try and keep an eye on our sort of carbon footprint, if you like. So we try and be as good as we can with everything. So yeah, and that just helps us as well because we can try and get as much alcohol and flavour out of that as much as we possibly can. You know, because like I say, we are flavour led. We want to make it as delicious as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
And we seem to have acquired some whiskey.
We have. Look at that. The whiskey fairies have been in. If only everybody had one of them. Yeah.
Indeed.
So this is our peat finish. So we chose a peat finish, really just to see how our initial spirit would taste, you know, being slightly smoked. And I think this is, like I say, this was my favourite until we had the Yorkshire Day. So, you know, people always say, which is your favourite? And I'm pretty fickle. So
what would be the main differences between this and the flagship that we tasted first?
So the main difference between this and the flagship, so this has started out in a bourbon cask, so you do get those sweet, creamy flavours. from the bourbon, but then it really does lead into that sort of really sort of coastalness coming through, which is really, really great. This one gives us a slightly darker flavour, I guess is probably the best way to describe it on the finish. So it gives you that light smoke, which is absolutely beautiful, you know, and it really does.
Okay, and that's because you've taken the whiskey from bourbon casks and then
initially.
and then you've disgorged the casks into a container. And then put that whiskey into casks that previously held peated whiskey.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And yeah, I've got a question, I think. Yeah. What's the question? Okay, so the question is, what do we do with the liquid that's left in the wash still that doesn't actually boil off? That's a really good question. So what we actually do is, at the end of the day, when we finished our distillation, we actually strip that pot still back until it reads about 2% alcohol. And the stuff that is left in there, what we do, we actually drain it off, and we have a couple of extra tanks over in the background there. We actually recycle that heat through a heat exchanger. So realistically, we're only using our boiler that heats everything twice a week. So we do 4 distillations a week, and actually for half of that, we reuse the heat, which is really cool, you know, really, really fantastic. And then any of the sort of organic matter that is left in that tank, because like I said, you know, we are working with that creamy wash there. There's dead yeast and all sorts of things that have come from that. Whatever is left in there, we actually send back up to the farm, and that's actually used as a fertilizer on the fields. So like I said, you know, we are conscious of the fact, you know, climate, you know, it's a big one. So it's a good question.
No,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
a good question.
Well, we were talking about sustainability and the farming techniques that you guys utilize, and obviously Tom specializes, and it was absolutely fascinating to understand how much detail really goes into
Absolutely. You
know, well, all aspects of the process.
Absolutely.
So this is good.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Have you tried it? Have you drank some?
I've
Same everybody at home, if you haven't yet done that, which I'm hoping people have done that initially.
So this, I'm sure if you're tasting this at home after the flagship, you'll notice that there's peat evident in here, but it's not big peat, you know, it's not like a Lagavulin
it doesn't
or
grab
a Lafroig.
you. Definitely not.
It's peat that just kind of intertwines with the sweetness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the beauty of using a peat cask for a finish rather than completely peating the barley. So rather than peating the malted barley, using that cask just to finish it just really gives you the best of both worlds, really. Kind of suits everybody, you know, because it does give you that smokiness that, you know, you want from a lovely peated whiskey.
Yes.
But on the flip side of that, because of where we've sourced our cask from, you actually get a lot of the coastal notes coming through. So you kind of do get a lot of that sort of seaside coming through. Which
we are by the seaside.
Exactly. So it's a perfect match. You could say a match made in heaven, I guess.
Yes. I could imagine going down to the beach with
exactly.
a bottle of this.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely perfect. Yeah,
amazing.
ideal. But, you know, it's very good, you know, and, you know, if we do this again, can only get better, can't it? You know, that's the only ways up, you know. It's one of those.
Now, are you able to tell me a little bit about this cheeky looking thing?
I was hoping you were going to ask me about this.
This is not normally seen.
It's not, no. So this, you don't usually see these in, you know, sort of in whiskey. You can see them for whiskey, but they tend to be for grain whiskey usually. You do actually commonly see them more for gin than you do whiskey, and that's because this actually helps the alcohol get to a much higher alcohol. Now, this one in particular is what we call a 4-plate rectifying column. It's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? It's a good one, especially when we've had a few drams already. Now, the reason for this is when you look at it, you'll notice there is these ridges going at the side of this. Now, each one of those is really where a copper plate sits. Okay, now each of those copper plates has lots of little holes in it. Okay, now what this does, so we actually use this column still in tandem with our spirit still. Okay, so we will basically collect all our low wines from our first stage distillation, pop all of that into our spirit still and start that process up. Only rather than sending it to the cold water condenser like we would normally, we actually divert it into the column still, which has its own condenser at the top. Okay, so that vapor will come out of our spirit still into our column at the bottom right here. Okay, now that vapor then will travel up through each one of those copper plates. Okay, so you can really see we're emphasizing that copper contact. Now, as that gets to the top where the condenser is, it will turn back into a liquid. So same process, except it will rain back down through each of those plates. not only is it going through each of those copper plates, it's actually meeting the vapor as well on the way up. So actually what happens is each one of these, you get like a little washing machine effect going on in here, which is quite cool. You know, they kind of act like mini distillations as well. And then once the liquid gets to the bottom, it then will transfer back into our spirit still. Right. So actually we create the loop between the two stills. And again, once we use this, the alcohol from this gets up to about 86%. So it's quite high. Wow. So compared to, you know, the 70s, you know, so you can see why it's used for gin. Yes. You know? Yes. So yeah, you know, this itself, you know, isn't unique, but that process is unique to us. So potentially we can produce, you know, two spirit styles, which is always great. You know, you want choices when you're doing something as, you know, as diverse as whiskey, really. So yeah, so we're very happy with it. You know, we love it. Everybody who comes to see us here absolutely loves it. You know, it's one of those pieces of equipment that catches your eye. You know,
it's quite unique, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
In a
so yeah, and then we do the middle cut like we would normally. So yeah,
fabulous.
It's good.
Good stuff.
So happy with the peat.
Yeah, very much enjoying this.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Smells amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and as you've left it, you know, leave it out a bit more, it kind of opens up a bit more. Definitely, it does kind of round off a bit, which is great.
It's wonderful. It's just lovely to be
in amongst it.
Yeah. Although it's not obviously operating today.
It's not today, no. So we don't actually operate on a weekend. Wednesdays as well is the only other day we don't distill. So.
But you still do tours.
We still do tours every single day, 3 times a day. You know, so it can be quite busy, and they fill up pretty quickly. You tend to find, you know, especially where we are here, we get a lot of curious visitors that are on the various campsites coming and, you know, wanting to find out what's actually going on. Because from the outside, it actually just looks like a little weird tin shed kind of thing, and then you get inside, and it's like, oh, amazing! You've got a coffee shop and all the rest
Pandora's
of it.
box.
Absolutely, definitely, yeah. That's kind of how it works, because people tend to leave with more than they came in with as well, which is always good.
Well, hopefully they're paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're pretty protective, to be honest. So.
Should be. So tell me, the peated expression, can people still buy? Oh, sorry, peated finished.
Yep.
Peat finished.
Peat finish.
Can people still buy it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's still available online from us. You know, that's the best place to get any of our expressions. Really, is online, and this is actually £60, so it's really a really good price, especially for the flavour that you get from it. You know.
And this is the first batch, right?
Yes, this is batch 1 of the peat. You noticed that, right? Yeah. So this is our very first batch of the peat finish. So in the future, you know, potentially as we get older ourselves, you know, we are a whiskey distillery. We have big dreams, so we plan to be here for a while. So. Potentially in the future, yeah, definitely look out for the second one. So yeah, once you've got your hands on this, definitely.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it's good, right?
I believe we've got another tasting
we do. Look, it's such a difficult job, isn't it, Eddie? You know, it's so hard. Tough. Yeah, so the next one we've got is actually a really exciting one. So the last one in the tasting pack that you guys do have at home actually is the Yorkshire Day 2021. Now this is very special because this is actually some of the oldest spirit that we actually have here at the Spirit of Yorkshire. So if you manage to get your hands on one of those tasting sets, well done, because it's a good set. So I think if we go and have a little taste of this.
If I must.
I see you twist your arm. Cool. Okay.
Cool. Look at this.
I know, right? Here's some I prepared earlier, as it were, in the industry, I guess.
Yes.
So yeah, like I say, you know, that Yorkshire Day is special for us here. It's contains some of the oldest spirit that we do. You know, we've distilled here. So we started in 2016, for those that kind of don't know. So we are sort of 5 years oldish. So, you know, you can understand what it's like. Are you struggling?
No.
Oh, good.
I'm just savouring the feeling.
So this is from carefully selected Oloroso sherry cask, which again I do believe you've had a brief conversation about if you have caught any of the earlier stuff. So Oloroso is a really lovely sherry.
So which one of these casks would be Oloroso?
So this huge cask here is the Oloroso sherry cask. You can see it's much bigger than a bourbon cask. So yeah, this is basically where this has come from, which is quite cool.
That's about 500 litres.
Yeah. The smell of that's
Is there
really good.
anything left?
I don't think there is. If it can wiggle, then probably not, because it's really heavy.
I reckon I could just get it in the boot with that.
You reckon on your own? Do you reckon?
No.
See,
Not
like,
with
see you
help.
try. Yeah. Well, if you speak nicely to Joe, you never know.
I think I do.
But yeah, you know, we wanted something that was. I mean, I love a sherry whiskey.
Right.
You know, sherry, especially. You know, if it's.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and this is a delicious one. I mean, the colour alone,
Colours are
compared
gorgeous,
to,
isn't it?
you know, sort of the flagship, you can see.
That's the bottle, just in case you get a big enough. So limited to 1,500
Yeah,
bottles. That's not a
1,500.
lot, is it?
No, it's not really. Well, the reason it is we've limited it to the 1,500 is, you know, it's at 55%, so it's slightly stronger than a lot of our other bottlings. You know, we tend to keep our bottling at 46%. Now, the 55% is just kind of what it came from the cask, to be honest. So we didn't want to sort of water it down anymore, as it were. And, you know, we wanted options for people. But yeah, it's a...
Yeah, it's a bottled at cask strength.
Yes, which is always good.
That's always
It's
nice.
always a good option, isn't it? Definitely.
Now, would you recommend adding water to this one? Or?
Again, it is, I mean, everybody has a different palate. So it is completely up to everybody.
Of course.
You know what I mean? This does tend to, like every whiskey, once you put water with it, it does open it up. This does kind of just take off that sort of tingle that you get. I personally wouldn't, but I'm a hardcore, no water in my whiskey, thank you. That's just the way I like to drink it.
Yes.
So it is completely up to you, but I would recommend it if you have those tasting packs at home, if you want to add a tiny, you know, bottled water, not tap water, if you have bottled water.
Spring water.
Yes, absolutely, is the best thing. You know, you don't want to add any other sort of minerals and stuff to it, really, that could potentially change it for the worse, really. So bottled water, definitely, or filtered water is good as well. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love it, absolutely love it. So you can see now the difficulties between favourites, you know. Every time we bring one.
Favourites at different times of day.
Absolutely.
Just have one
This is definitely an end of night one for me. You know,
definitely
this is one I would definitely finish off with.
Yeah. Whereas the flagship's more of a breakfast whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Somebody actually said that once to me. It was a Scottish one, yeah.
The term I use often.
A breakfast whiskey, yeah. It's a good one, and I use it quite a lot actually when I'm referring to the flagship. But this is definitely the one you want when you've had a good night with friends, for sure.
Bedtime whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'll save my bottle for the winter.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely.
There's definitely a sort of Christmassy feel about it.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it? Definitely. I get that 100%. You know, it's fruity. You know, you do get a lot of the, it's like, Christmassy, definitely. Immediately jumps at you.
Imagine this with a mince pie or something.
Oh, yeah. What a
Brandy
great
butter.
shout. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, that's probably where mine's going to go now. Save it for Christmas. And then people come around and be like, no, you can't have any of this.
No,
this
is
mine.
have some fun.
Yeah, have some of that instead, definitely. But yeah, would you add water to your whiskey then as that of interest?
I think definitely, well, not definitely, but with the flagship and the peated finished, yes, I think they can carry water, and it doesn't do them any harm.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
With this, it's so sort of unctuous and rich.
Yes, exactly.
And
it lingers. It has a lingering kind of.
And I think adding water to it, whilst you'll definitely bring more of the flavors to life, I think you'll lose that intensity and the real lovely.
I would have to agree with that.
Mouthfeel. So personally, I think even at 55%, leave it as is.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree with you, especially considering the effort we've gone to make it so beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to.
5 years of blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely, it's not just all songs and rainbows. It can be a little bit hard sometimes, but it's worth it. When people actually get it in a glass and start to drink it and really enjoy it, ultimately that's what we're after. We're after people really enjoying it, and especially when you do the tours, when you get to this bit, and you see people enjoying it, it's like cooking. You want people to enjoy what you put out. Ultimately, so as long as people are enjoying it, we're happy. That's
what it's all about.
Absolutely, and what's not to love? Look at it. Even the bottle, even the carton, absolutely everything's been thought about. But so this is a very tight one between this and the peat. Honestly,
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah.
Well, we hope you are enjoying that at home as much as we are here.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions about it or anything? I mean, is anything going on?
Not thus far.
No, cool. That's good.
So obviously the Oloroso casks, but there's also bourbon casks. So is there a bourbon
so the
cask
bourbon
here?
ones. That one, here's one I prepared earlier.
This one here.
That one here is the bourbon. Yeah.
Right,
So this is
a bourbon barrel.
Yep. So this is a bourbon cask. So we actually get our bourbon cask from a company called Old Forester, and they're based up in Kentucky. So the thing with bourbon is when the bourbon manufacturers have used their cask for their bourbon, so they get a brand new cask every time, fill it with their spirit, which has been basically use 51% corn, so they have to use at least 51% corn. Once that's been matured and they've got their bourbon, they have to use a brand new cask. They send that cask off because they can't use it again and call it a bourbon. So actually it's great for people like us who want a bourbon-led flavour because we have a lovely ready supply of bourbon casks, which is fantastic, which really gives you those creamy flavours, those honey flavours come from the bourbon casks. But yeah, the size difference between a bourbon and a sherry cask that you saw earlier is quite huge. The different sized casks that you can get. I mean, if you've spotted the little one just on this cask here.
Get that under my arm.
This is used mainly sort of for collaborations, really. This actually spent a long time on the counter in the visitor centre there. And what this just goes to show, the smaller casks tend to mature liquid quicker. It's quite cute.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed that.
Good.
That was a wonderful tasting and tour.
Good. It's a bit of a weird setting for me, this. It's all very new, is this, online kind of.
I know. It's not ideal. I mean, we'd much rather have everyone here.
Absolutely. Hopefully
tasting
next
with
year.
them. And things will come back.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get there.
You guys are hopefully going to join us for Whiskey Festivals.
Fingers crossed, absolutely. That'd be great. That'd be so much fun.
So you hopefully you'll be able to see Amy and team.
Actually in the flesh. In the actual flesh. Can you imagine?
Exactly. So listen, thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this session. Thanks to Amy again for hosting us, and thanks to everyone at Spirit of Yorkshire for putting this together, and to Jonathan behind the camera. Why are you waving?
He's waving. Trust us.
And we've got another session coming up in about 10-15 minutes.
Yes, yeah. So I do believe that is with me again. So I do believe we're actually going to do some of our favourite cocktails. So it's with myself and Morgan. So stay tuned for that.
Oh, that should be fun.
Yeah, it should be good.
Indeed. Right. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and we shall see you in 5 or 10.
See you soon. Thank you.